If you're about to go into a job interview, or if you've got one coming up soon and you're thinking to yourself, please just let this be a normal place to work, somewhere I can get on with my job, then I'm making this video for you. Because most people treat an interview as a test that they've got to pass. But what I want to say to you today is it's your opportunity to also put the future employer through their paces and test out whether it's somewhere that you want to work, whether it's somewhere you want to spend your time. You are also the examiner, and if you know what to look for and you go in with your eyes open, a toxic workplace will tell you exactly what it is before you ever sign the contract. I've sat on both sides of the interview table in my career, and I've made this mistake myself. I've gone into a new job thinking I could fix it. I could fix a toxic workplace. It turned out I couldn't. So today I'm going to give you the 5 red flags to look out for at interview, which will signal a toxic workplace and help you avoid it. And I'm also going to give you the exact questions to ask at interview to expose those red flags. If you're new here, my name's Lucy and I'm so glad you found the channel. So let's crack on. So the first thing I want to talk about is that the interview doesn't actually start when you walk in through the door of that interview. It starts when you first make contact with that future employer. I'm sure you'll have put a huge amount of effort into putting forward your best information, compiling your best examples of your experience, tidying up your CV, making it appropriate to the role that you're applying for, and you've been invited to interview. But the things to look out for before you get to that interview are things like last minute rescheduling, poor communication, unclear joining instructions, no information about who you're going to meet at interview, no information about how to get there, or nothing to kind of make it easy and welcoming for you to make your best impression at interview. Another thing to look out for is when you do arrive and you go into reception, how the staff welcome you is also a clear signal of how that employer is. Are they flustered? Are they welcoming? Are they relaxed? Or are they defensive? Keep your eyes and ears open for the atmosphere right from the get-go. It gives you a really good signal of the kind of culture that exists at that organisation. What I found in all my years is that toxic cultures leak into every single interaction, either between staff members, between staff members and the outside world, and you may well see interactions that signal toxicity while you're waiting in the waiting room for your interview to begin. So like I say, keep your eyes open. An organisation that is healthy treats candidates with the same respect that they would treat any colleague, any client, anybody important. They should treat you with respect. If they're disorganised with you now, just imagine what the handover of a project might be like, or how day-to-day meetings are managed. Let's pause right here. If you've got an experience of a toxic workplace, maybe think back to the communications that you received in the run-up to your first interview with that organisation. How did they communicate with you? How were you treated? Were there any red flags that you can now identify and piece together now that you've got experience of having worked in that toxic place? Maybe think about what those signals were and then keep them front of mind when you're applying for new jobs. Because I promise you, that told you something, even though you didn't realise it at the time. And I'm really sad that you went through that terrible experience. So red flag number 1 is how they treat you before the interview, how they communicate with you, how organised they are, and how much respect they treat you with. Red flag number 2 is the family language, and many viewers to my videos have referenced this in relation to toxic workplaces. The kinds of phrases to look out for are things like, we're like a family here, we go above and beyond. And my particular least favourite, we work hard and we play hard, because what that tells me is about late hours, possibly drinking culture, possibly bad behaviours. I don't want to play at work. Work is work and my personal time is my personal time. So that for me is an enormous red flag. These phrases aren't values. They are warnings about boundary violations that are kind of dressed up as, I don't know, warmth or, a happy feeling at work. Workplace cultures that are described as being like a family will often mean that people are treated inconsistently, that hierarchies are sort of blurred and muddled, accountability is inconsistent, loyalty is put before professionalism. A workplace that is healthy doesn't need to tell you it's healthy. It will signal it by the way it operates, by the processes and systems that are in place to manage people well, to manage people fairly, and without showing favouritism. The kinds of things to listen out for in these conversations about culture are opportunities for professional development, what systems and processes are in place at the organisation to run it well. If they talk about you joining the organisation, do they talk about a structured process for your induction, for you to learn about the organisation, for you to take on the tasks in your role? How do they describe that? And then also, how do they describe measuring performance? Do they talk about performance indicators, or is it more fluid? Is it more blurred? So look out for structure and consistency and process, as a healthy organisation will have those in place in order to manage people fairly and consistently. Before we move on to red flags 3 and 4, which are often the ones that people miss, I want to ask you a question. Are you currently looking for a new job or considering moving on? Because if so, you might find my workbook, Should I Stay or Should I Go, helpful in helping you sort of ask yourself some questions and make up your mind about what to do. I'll pop the link in the description below. Many viewers have found it helpful to give some structure to these really difficult questions about what next steps to take when you're in an unhappy situation at work. Red flag number 3 is when the interviewers give evasive answers to your questions. Now, this is where many candidates actually give their power away, and it's the place at the end of the interview where the interviewer will ask if you've got any questions for them. And honestly, I think I've been asked that question in every single interview I've ever had over the years, and every single interview I've ever managed myself as an interviewer. It's common courtesy to ask if the interviewee has any questions for you. By giving away your power, I mean that you ask something really safe and uncontroversial, like what does a typical day look like, or talk to me about the team, something like that. What you can, of course, do is prepare some questions for this moment which would uncover a toxic workplace. Now, you can choose your own, maybe based on the kind of experiences that you've had, but some suggestions that I've got for you are, you could ask, how does the team handle disagreement or conflict at work? Another one could be, what does success look like for this role in 6 months' time? Another one you could ask is, what's the biggest challenge facing this team right now? And watch out not only for the content of the answer, so for that first one about how does the team handle conflict or disagreement, if they say something like, well, we never have a disagreement, then that's not true, because every team will have a disagreement. So watch out for what they say. For the success in the role, are they clear of what they're looking for, or are they fluffing the answer? You want to know that they've thought out what they're looking for from whoever's successful in this appointment. With the what's the biggest challenge question, are they honest? Do they talk about real challenges, or are they evasive? Maybe there's disagreement between the panel. Sometimes you could find that one person has one answer to the question, somebody else disagrees with them. Obviously, another massive red flag. A confident and healthy team would answer these questions directly and clearly and honestly, and you'll be able to see in the way they answer how true that is. A toxic team might deflect, they might generalise, or they might even sort of look shifty and look at each other before answering, looking for permission almost. So you want to see that's a healthy group of people who work together well already and are able to be honest with the challenges that the organisation faces. So on to red flag number 4, the question about turnover. This is one that you have to research before the interview, before you walk into that room, and then ask about it in the room. Within this topic, the kinds of things to probe on are how long this role has been vacant for, and you can probably check that on LinkedIn or Glassdoor. You can ask how many people have held this role in the last 3 years. Ask them what happened to the role holder before you. Why is the vacancy arisen? And again, watch out for their evasiveness. How honest are they about what's going on? Another great question here is how long has the hiring manager been in post? So you're what you're looking out for is kind of high levels of turnover. If in the last 3 years there've been 3 people in that role, that's very, very quick turnover. If the hiring manager has only been there for 3 months, they're only just getting their feet under the table. So try to, with these questions, find out what's going on in the organisation, how long people are staying, and whether there's any red flag that waves itself at you while you're asking. A pattern of high turnover is a really strong signal of a toxic workplace. I thought I'd tell you about a senior role that I took, and I was keen to get a chief exec of a charity role, and I'd applied for lots of different roles and been unsuccessful. And when I was offered this role, and I was so excited and was just accepted it straight away. But I asked for some questions about, I wanted to see some information about the financials of the charity, because I knew that they'd been through some turbulence. I could look back in the reported accounts on the Charity Commission website, but I wanted to see the more up-to-date numbers, because the Charity Commission is based on annual accounts, reported accounts, so they're a bit out of date. So I got the latest figures, and there was some reticence about sharing them with me, which should have been a red flag. And when I looked at the numbers, I could see that there were some issues with basically some funding that was coming to an end and not necessarily repeatable. So there was, some financial troubles ahead, which also should have been a red flag. And I took the job anyway, thinking I can turn this around. And I kind of did. I did turn it around, and I really enjoyed working there. And I'm pleased with, the success I had. But boy, was it tough. It wasn't an easy gig. And the red flags were there. And I chose, eyes wide open, I chose to ignore them and push on anyway. But I suppose what I want to talk about, in this video is the kinds of red flags that you can have access to before you accept a job. And if you choose to go for the job anyway, then fine, and good luck to you, and great. But you know what you're walking into in that case. So that's what this video is all about anyway, is the kinds of questions that you can ask, the kinds of information you can ask for. If they offer you the job, you can ask for more information. That's what I did. I was being offered a chief executive role, and I wanted to see the up-to-date management accounts, the current financial situation of the charity before I made my mind up. So that's completely legitimate. And like I said at the top of the video, these application processes and these interview processes are as much about you being comfortable and confident about going for a role as they are about them testing you. Don't think it's all one-sided. It's two-sided, and it's really up to you to ask for the information you need and ask for the questions that you need answering before you make your decision. And the 5th red flag I wanted to talk about is how to respond when they push back, or if they push back. Now, this can be the most revealing one, and it's maybe a tactic that most candidates won't necessarily use, but it's kind of like when you ask for more information and they push back. So in that example I just shared, they may have said, no, we're not going to give you that information until you join. They might have been within their rights to do so. That would have been a really strong signal to me about some sort of covering up that was going on before I joined, and it would, I probably, I might well have decided against joining. Other examples of what you could ask for. So you could ask that you could say, I want some more time to consider this job offer. You could say, I would like to speak to somebody else in the team before I make my mind up. A healthy employer will say, absolutely, why not? If they've decided that you're the right person for the job, they want you to join. So they'll make it as easy as possible for you to say yes to joining. So they won't put barriers in your way. In fact, that reminds me that in that process that I went through, not only was I given access to the management accounts, but I was also given the opportunity to meet some of the direct reports of the chief executive. So there was no, sort of hiding. There was kind of complete transparency, and I could have decided not to continue with that process. So I think it's very worthwhile remembering that this is a kind of partnership of equals, and if it is a healthy workplace, you can ask for that information, that more time, that meeting somebody else. If they push back, that's a signal it's not a healthy workplace. A toxic workplace in that situation might well say no. They might well show irritation that you're asking for things, and they might ask, they might query why you want to ask for that information. So there are all kinds of signals wrapped up in there, which will either, sort of help you know that it's a positive place to go to, or the opposite. How they respond when you ask for perfectly reasonable information before you're an employee is likely to be the same when you ask for some information when you become an employee. So if they push back now, they'll push back when you're there doing a project, wanting to know some budget information or some technical know-how. So it's just a really good way of testing out what kind of employer they are likely to be. What I want you to take from this video is really the knowledge and confidence that an interview is not a one-way test that you pass or you fail. It's a two-way conversation between adults, and you can ask as many questions as you want to ask, and they will ask their questions and you will ask your questions, and that is completely legitimate. And if it's a healthy workplace, you will get strong signals through that process of the way they behave and the way they operate. You're deciding whether to invest your time, your energy, your experience in them as an employer, and you're completely within your rights to go into that with your eyes completely open. The mantra of this channel is that, work should lift us up. It shouldn't be wearing us down. So if in the beginning of your interactions with this company, you get a sense that they're wearing you down, then maybe it's time to exit from that process. If you're at some kind of crossroads right now and you're deciding whether to move on from your current role or stay, do have a look at my workbook. Or if you're feeling really stuck and you want to work with me on a one-to-one basis, the link to apply for my waitlist is also down below in the description. So I'd love to hear from you. If you found today's video useful and you're job hunting right now, I wish you all the very best. If you know somebody who's also job hunting, maybe share it with them so that this message gets to them as well. Wishing you all the very best. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.